In the outline of my presentation, I will start up with why do we need to publish? I'm pretty sure we might have different answers to this particular question, but it is very important to know why do we need to publish? We might know some of the reasons to publish, but I'm pretty sure that if we get to know most of the known reasons to publish, it will motivate us more to put more efforts, because publishing is a hectic process, but the rewards we get at the end of publishing a paper is really good and appreciated. Now that we will learn why do we need to publish, we'll move on to the types of publications. So it's equally important to know if I need to publish, if I have to put efforts, for which type of publication, what type of efforts will be fruitful. So after why do we need to publish, we'll move on to types of publications. Then it is very, very important to know how to select your journal. Today, in any search engine, if we enter, I want to publish a paper, you will be bombarded with results. I'm pretty sure after 100 pages or 1,000 pages, you will get journals offering you high quality paper, journals, high impact journals, and whatnot. But whether all that is the same, whether all journals are same, whether any journal publication is considered as a journal publication is something we need to know. So after we know the different types of publications, it is important to know how to choose a journal. I have fallen for this trap, and I deem it very necessary to educate all the participants how to be very careful while selecting a journal. After having discussed these three important aspects of the publication, we will lastly move to how to write quality articles. Now, with this, I think we'll be clear that how will our today's presentation go forward. Let's get started with the first thing. Why do we need to publish? It is a question that one needs to ask him or herself. What is the reason? I would suggest you to jot down a few points. Why do we need to publish? Some of the common reasons known worldwide, we'll begin with that. It helps in improving our writing and research skills. Although our schooling, our high school, our diplomas, our undergrad courses, our postgrad courses, our doctoral courses, we are being taught in English by our teachers, mostly. We write our exams, we write our assignments, we write our reports in English. Despite that, we lack professional English writing. And this is one of the main flaws people from India have at the moment. So what happens is when you write a technical paper and publish, your paper is not only reviewed for the technical aspect, it is reviewed for the writing part by a native speaker. We don't happen to be native speakers. English is not our first language. So what generally happens is when we think of ideas, we think in our first language or second language. Then what we do is we begin to translate. There is where the whole mess starts. So we get lost in the translation, and those are the weaknesses one can find when they review our papers. So when we publish, it is reviewed by a technical professional who is well versed with the professional English writing. They identify our flaws, shortcomings, and give us a first-hand feedback on the non-technical part. Now, that is one part of it, the non-technical part. Next is the technical part of it. Since most of the research journals, what they do is they have a list of experts in different research areas. So what they happen to do is they happen to review your paper with a great level of knowledge. So apart from the non-technical English part being evaluated, you are being evaluated for your research skills. So publishing helps us improve both the writing skills as well as the research skills. There are numerous processes involved in researching, that is writing, editing, and publishing. Prior to publishing, we are not familiar with that. So publishing helps us get familiar with this and helps us to gain the experience and do these activities promptly. It also helps us identify the first-hand valuable feedback that we get from the reviewers. Not only that, we get to know what required improvement is needed at that moment. Apart from that, we get to know our strengths and weaknesses. So what we do at the end of our paper being reviewed, we get our English corrected, we get our research skills improvised, we get to know our strengths, how to polish them further, and we get to know our weaknesses so that we get to work on them. These are important aspects in researching. Next, why we need to publish is that we get known to researchers in our area. Now, if I happen to perform any research, say in the northern part of India, how do researchers from my area, from the southern part of India or other parts of India or globally get to know me? As if it stays confined to my institute, will they get to know? No, they will not get to know. So research provides you with another platform to get known to researchers in your area. So while we are searching for latest papers, we use a term keywords. I'll be discussing this in detail in the later part of my presentation. So what actually happens is that when we enter the keywords, we get the list of papers. There we get to know, oh, this guy is performing research in this particular topic. So we get known to him through that search, through our papers. It helps in identifying new researchers. Now, I'm pretty sure that once we carry out literature review, we look for latest research. We might have some famous, names, but apart from that, we get to know new researchers, budding researchers. Again, it is through publishing we get to know about these aspects of research. Once we get known as new researchers, as and when we progress, we start getting a recognition. We start getting known as a reliable researcher. This is how one gets recommended as a reviewer. This is the procedure that is followed by most of the journals. That, through recommendations by different researchers in a particular area, we get recommended as a review. Next, why do we need to publish? It helps us network with professors and researchers. I think this is something all professionals look for. What generally happens is in conference gatherings, during tea breaks, lunches, or dinners, when I'm talking of conference gatherings, I mean international conference gatherings. Here I would like to again clarify, when I am talking of international conference gatherings, I'm talking of conferences organized in developed countries, mostly Western countries. So what happens is, during these gatherings, like-minded researchers network for possible collaboration. What happens is, during such gatherings, they introduce themselves that I'm so-and-so, I'm working on so-and-so, and they begin the process of collaboration. So it is through papers that the collaboration starts. But in a collaborative research, the strengths of all the collaborators combine. I am good in doing so-and-so, he is good in doing so-and-so. So what that leads to is effective research. And my dear friends, that is the key to long-lasting research. That is collaborative research. Again, collaborative research mostly comes through publishing. Next, it helps us getting promotions. I'm pretty sure that most of the participants would have thought of this as the first reason.
Hello, Adil.
So publication helps you, your department, and your institute get a better rank. In nutshell, to conclude, why do we need to publish? It showcases your research skills. It speaks of your caliber, your mettle, your potential. I think that's what all of us are looking for. For that reason, we are here. It is a mark of reputation. Now, in the research fraternity, research papers, they speak of one's reputation. More the number of good journal papers one has is considered to be reputed. It then, so we need to publish. Now that we have identified why do we need to publish, it's important to know what are the different types of publications so that you know whether the efforts you're putting is worth that or whether all the types of publications are same. Are they going to fetch you the same for your CV, for your research profile? We'll learn about that. So in the types of publications, we have something known as peer-reviewed publications. In peer-reviewed publications, what happens is your paper is being evaluated by an expert. Then what is the other type of publication? The other type of publication is non-peer-reviewed. What does it mean? I'll give you an analogy. We write the exam and then we get the grades and then we get the degree. That is somewhat similar to the peer review. Another is non-peer review. Imagine you get a degree without writing exam. Will you consider that as ethical? Will you consider that as legitimate? Not at all. So that is the second category of publication. These publications are useless. Let me tell you one thing, friends. You're going to regret having these papers in your profile down the line if you happen to take your research now. The Web of Science is the most reputed database indexing. It comprises of two types. We have the SCI or SCIE, known as Science Citation Index. How do we know? We get to know through an impact factor. So if your journal is indexed in SCI, is indexed in Web of Science, and it has a Web of Science impact factor, then it belongs to this category. Now, mind it, friends, as I told you that there are many journals, fake journals, hoax journals. Similarly, there are different organizations that award impact factor. So when you're looking for an impact factor, you should look for an SCI or Web of Science. What is the second? The second one is the ESCI, Emerging Sources Citation Index. It doesn't have an impact factor. Basically, when a new journal is looking for an SCI indexing, so what the Web of Science people do, they will be like, okay, dude, you got to take the ESCI first. We're going to assess you for a year or so. If you perform well, we'll get you promoted. But both of them are accepted and recognized as genuine indexing. Now, I need to get you cautious that there are other indexings like Google Scholar. Now, just because Google is associated with this indexing does not mean this is a very reputed or a very authentic indexing. If I open a journal today morning, today afternoon, I'll have the Google indexing. It carries no meaning if your journal is only indexed in Google Scholar. Procust. I see many journals boasting about Procust indexing. I don't know what. Research ID. Again, be very careful. Don't fall into journals who claim for these indexings. Index Copernicus International. They've even put a word international to make us fools. But we should be very cautious. CiteShare and academic search. These are some of those which you should be careful. Next, now we know that our journal, our publication should be peer reviewed, it should be indexed. Now coming to the types of publication. First is the journal publication. Second is the book chapter. Now the difference between a journal publication is that you directly submit to a journal, that the journal follows that review. Again, when I say journal publications, peer reviewed and the indexed ones. What are book chapters? Book chapters are actually conference proceedings published in the form of a book by reputed publishers. What that means is that each paper becomes a chapter. It is considered to be of lower standard than a journal publication. Next is conference proceedings. Is when the conference proceedings get published as conference proceedings, like we have the famous IEEE proceedings. My friends, in all three, if they are peer reviewed and they are indexed, they're good. And I've given you the order of how one should target. Now, moving on to some reputed publishers you should come across is the Nature is one of the most reputed publishers now, and I'm pretty sure that for the next lot of decades, it's going to retain the #1 position. If one has a couple of papers in any Nature journal in their lifetime, I think they have done a good deal of work. I think what I would suggest, when I'm trying, one should try for at least a couple of papers in any Nature journal. Next is Elsevier BV. It is one of the most widely subscribed publishing. So if you're looking for your paper to get a quick recognition, a wide recognition, Elsevier is a good platform. I myself try my papers to get through into Elsevier first. If they're not accepted in Elsevier, then I switch to different journals, mainly for the purpose of getting more citations. Next is Springer. So Springer, once upon a time, was as good as Elsevier, but now they have focused more on book series and conference proceedings, but not as bad, one can consider. Taylor and Francis, well-known publishers, we have a lot of books, they have some good journals, one can target that as well. Wiley, again, as good as Taylor and Francis, known for their books, they have good number of journals. So if it happens that your aim and scope falls into their journals, you may consider. The last but not the least, Sage Publishing. So these are some of the reputed publishers one should keep into mind. And again, I'm talking of general because I'm sure that the participants come from different backgrounds. So I've given publishers who publish in almost all types of specializations, branches. After this, now that we know why do we need to publish, we know types of publications, it's very, very important to know how to select a journal. While selecting a journal, you should first look for a specialized journal. What that means is, I'll give an example. I work on steel. I should first target a steel journal. If I don't happen to get my paper through a steel journal, then I should move on to a structural engineering journal. If I don't happen to get it through a structural engineering journal, I should move on to a civil engineering journal. If I don't happen to get it through a civil engineering journal, I should get it to a general engineering journal. If I don't happen to get it there, I should not get it published because it will be dumped somewhere and people will not get to know about my research. It will not fetch me any good. You can relate it to your specializations and try looking for a super specialized journal, general, and then common engineering journal. Of course, it should have an impact factor and a high impact factor. Now, impact factor is nothing It's basically a sort of a competition between the journals. A higher impact factor journal attracts more number of papers. Their review process is very stringent. And getting a paper into a high impact factor journal is considered to be good in your academic profile. So first, choose a journal based on your specialization, super specialization. Then look for a high impact factor journal. Next, what if it doesn't happen to be SCI? Then we should look for ESCI or Scoops as discussed previously. Next, we should look for a good publisher, because publishers play a very important role in circulating. So you have done your good by publishing, you have done your good by getting it through the review process. Now it is the job of the publisher. Until there, your efforts are the same. Henceforth, it is the publisher and his network that is responsible for making your article as popular and as possible, and fetch you all the benefits that you'll get from which we discussed in why to publish. Next is the editorial board. Now, it so happens is at some point of time, a journal is doing good, but because of the degradation in their editorial board, it loses its recognition slowly and slowly. It may so happen you may have your paper in a very good journal now, but 10 years later, that journal might lose its indexing. That journal may altogether cease to exist. So it will be difficult for you to express to others that at that point of time, the journal was good. Right now, it doesn't exist anymore. Editorial board is responsible for the sustenance of the journal. So look for a good editorial board when you're looking for a journal. The last but not the least, the duration of review. And this is important for the authors. My papers are not going to fetch me any good if I submit it this year, if it gets forwarded to the reviewers next year, and if I get it accepted the year after. It is not going to fetch me any good. Good journals have a reasonable duration of review. I understand the reviewers are, they are busy. It's a voluntary job. But if the review process exceeds more than 6 to 8 months, I think, friends, you need to look for another job. Generally, you'll find the review time or average review time within the details of the journal published by different publishers. So these are the basic things one should look for as how to select a journal. Now we know why do we need to publish. We know types of publications. We also know how to select a journal. Now let's come to the basic part, how to write quality articles. I'll quickly take you to the components of the paper. So we have the title, then we have the abstract, it's followed by keywords, then we have the introduction, then we have objectives and motivation, we have materials and methods, we have results, we have discussion, we have recommendations and conclusions, we have references. Now friends, here I'm talking of a general paper. There are different types of papers, but most of the papers belong to this category. For that reason, I chose to talk on this type of paper. So let's get started with the title. So the first thing your title should be, it should be captivating. It should be impressive. It should be attractive. That's the first thing that catches the reader when he looks at a very catchy title. And when I say catchy title, I don't mean novel type of catchy, but with words being put in such an order that it makes you interested. It gets you interested in, reading that paper. Second, it should be informative. It should give you the idea as to what the paper is going to be about. It should introduce the subject of the paper to the readers in a clear and concise manner. This is very important when you're writing a title. From syntactic point of view, it is a metadata structure that can be a word, a phrase, an expression. that serves to indicate a paper or one of its parts and talks about the subject. So a title of the paper can be as small as COVID-19. I think one can understand what the paper is going to be about. A good title should provide reasonable answers to the following two questions. What is the first question is, does the title of your article in isolation, if you only look at the title, give you a full yet concise and specific indication of your work? If you get a yes answer to that, your title is good. This is the first thing you should look for while writing a title. Second, would someone be interested in, if he's from the same background, same area of research, by looking at the title, will he be interested and inclined to read your abstract? Because after title, abstract is the second thing, one part. So you must answer these two questions before proceeding. Better to have a list of titles and then see which is the most appropriate. I'll give you a tip. Try avoiding long titles. People get lost in words. It bores them, defeats the purpose. Next, we'll move to abstract. Now, in the abstract, you should state your objective clearly. You should get to know what specifically the author is trying to imply. You should indicate the scope and procedures, but briefly. So that is the skill you will develop on after you begin writing more and more papers. It should talk about the principal conclusions, but in a very concise manner, because you will have different constraints when you're writing an abstract. It should mention the practical application of your finding, if that is appropriate with you. If you happen to mention a practical application, you got a thumbs up. You should be economical with the number of words we use in the abstract, because many journals have a word limit. So what is the point if you exceed? Be economical with the words. Again, do not cross the word limits of the journal. It irritates if you, after submitting, they learn that you have crossed the word limit. Abstract continued. Some general tips is we should use simple English. Friends, never think that if you use complicated English, you will be appreciated more. Simple English is appreciated by native speakers as well as the non-native speakers. So use simple English. Do not cite references in your abstract. That's a very bad habit that many fresh researchers develop in the initial part of their career. Included the information, only that information that is being presented in the article. I have come across some papers where the article and the rest of the paper don't seem to match. Again, that leaves a very bad impression. When you're using abbreviations, at the first, try to expand them at the first occurrence. Most important, that you should prepare an abstract after having wrote the entire article. At the end, you get a clarity, what you have done, what you have not done. Then you are in a good position to write the abstract. So abstract should be the last part of your journal paper writing or paper writing in journal. A tip that you should discuss with your colleagues when you're doing or writing a paper, they will tell you what you're missing at. Because generally what happens is we feel that, oh, this information is not necessary, that information is not necessary. That is because that information is known to us. But for a third person, that may be a vital information. But when you're discussing it with your colleagues, with your peers, they'll tell you, oh, you're missing at that. So a good habit is that before submitting, get your papers reviewed by your colleagues. Now moving on to the introduction section. So in the introduction section, you should give a general introduction on the topic for the broad audience. So you got to start from a broad topic, then you slowly, gradually, in a very systematic order, narrow down your topic. That's one of the efficient ways of writing an introduction. While narrowing down, you got to state your research problem and your aims. What are your goals? What are you looking for? So this trend helps a lot. Your literature review should be extensive. It can comprise of several paragraphs if necessary. You should summarize the relevant literature on your topic. I see many researchers bringing papers from here and there, irrelevant ones. This is a very bad indicator that if you're adding irrelevant literature. It's good to discuss the current state of art. What the current state of art means is that you're doing your research at the moment and it's at par with the international standards if you're taking the current state of art into consideration. You should note the gaps in the literature that you're going to address through your study. So if you've got to bridge the gap, that is one of the most appreciated and preferred habits that reviewers are looking for while they are reviewing the paper. Then there will be no question on the novelty aspect of your research. You may choose to write research targets in one paragraph if there are more. You have to state your research question, lucid and clear. When you're identifying research gaps, if there are many, once you're narrowing down, you're going to pinpoint that this is the particular thing I'm looking for, or I'm going to study, or I'm going to explore. Once you have identified what you're going to explore, you have to briefly, again, you're not going to, bore your readers. You're going to describe very briefly how you're going to accomplish it through your research methodology. You can also, although this is optional, you can give a preview of your main results, very preview of the principal contributions. You may give a paper overview, again in one paragraph, if it is applicable. Again, it's optional, not compulsory. You may also give a section by section overview of the paper's contents in the form of a flowchart. Again, this is optional. Now, the tips that you should cite thoroughly, but not excessive. It should not be your research paper comprises of 200 references. Avoid too many citations for a single point. If you're making a point and you want to support it by an existing reference, cite the latest ones. Don't cite for a single point 10, 20 or more references. That speaks of the lack of professionalism when you're writing. Another tip is keep it short. It should not be that your paper introduction comprises of 5-6 pages. When you're talking about the importance of a topic, show it by giving references or by your explanation. Don't tell that this is an important topic. That's very bad. Don't bury your readers in detail. People get bored. You might not get bored because this is your paper and this is going to fetch you a publication. But as a reader, I want things crystal clear, brief, and concise. Check the journal word limit before you plan to write one or before you choose a journal. Next, we move on to objectives and motivation. You should go from general to specific. I will have one general objective, then I will have specific objectives. That order must be followed. Your objective should be clear. It should not be confusing to the readers. That they're not able to understand what exactly do the authors want to study. If you can target a great problem, I give an example of pollution, then that adds value to your research findings. You should define the focus of your study. Once you define the targets, you define the goals, it should be focus-centric. What exactly are you focusing on? You must also identify the various parameters that you're going to investigate. That is very clear. After having identified the various variables, you must identify the various steps involved. It can be in the form of a table or a flowchart that gives the clarity that the reader understands what exactly do the authors want to find. Again, you must give out the limits of your study. In a single study, you cannot achieve everything. So you're going to make it sure that at the end, you state the limitations of your study. One other tip is avoid collection of data that is not necessary. It is simply any unnecessary data simply bores the readers. Moving on to materials and methods. So you should start from general information that applies to the entire paper. Then you should move to the specific experimental details or the modeling technique or the analytical procedures. So you should go from general to specific. Your material and method should follow a particular order, the same order that should be followed in the results and discussion part. Whenever you're talking of procedures, if it has been used previously, try citing those papers. It gives credibility to your research. You should begin writing your materials and methods while you're performing experiments, so as you don't miss out any data and later struggle recalling them. Do not discuss the advantages and disadvantages of any material and methods in your results, in your of that sort in your materials and methods. You're talking of that, but you're not talking about that. So to save space, you should be concise yet thorough when you're talking about various equipments used. After completing your materials and methods section, you should ask two questions. Is there sufficient detail so that the experiments can be reproduced by others? If not, you're going to relook into that. Second, is there any excess information that I can get rid of without affecting the quality of the interpretation or the results? If yes, please do that. Now moving on to the results. The results should justify your claims. Now you have made claims in your abstract, in your introduction, motivation. It should be justified. How? It should be adequate and logical at the same time. Do not omit any important findings. Try polishing them. Try supporting them with other sorts of literature, but don't omit after you have carried out all the hard work. Do not present any raw data. Raw data simply irritates the readers because that's what you have done, but that's not what we're looking for. If it's asked, that's a secondary thing. And the first, do not produce any raw data. Include your results in the form of tables, graphs, and figures. Try to present them in a very concise and comprehensive manner. Moving on to the discussion. My dear friends, this is the most important part of the research. This is what differentiates between a report and a research paper. You should spend nearly 50% of your time while writing a paper on the discussion. It explores the underlying meaning of your research. This is what you're giving to the world. This section needs to present the importance. That's what is important in your study. Must be present. Some tips to follow: do not be repetitive. Be concise and make your points clearly in the discussion part. Avoid using any jargons. This is not a novel writing. Follow a logical stream of thought. If you follow clarity throughout your paper, you have good chances your paper will get through. If subheadings are needed to organize your results and interpretation part, you can go ahead and use them. Relate your findings with similar findings, similar studies. That again adds credibility to your paper. If someone has found so and so, you're also finding so and so, and you relate his findings to your findings, that means you have not done any sort of what they call, uh, we use unethical editing in your paper, that you have manipulated. Try finding alternate explanations to your findings. That adds a lot to your paper and impresses the reviewers. Over here again, you should acknowledge the study limitations that speaks of your sincerity and transparency. In this section, you should also make suggestions for future research. If people start identifying that, oh, this researcher also states future research, your paper will be read more and more, and you will get more citations. More citations, more benefit. Do not waste entire, again, stop relating or stop repeating your results in the discussion part. You have already done that in the results section. Do not introduce new results in the discussion. Whatever has been introduced in the results part should be explained here. Now, recommendations and conclusions. This is the takeaway thing from your, this is what you give to the world. Okay, this is my final output. This is the last word on the issues you address in your paper. It summarizes your thoughts and conveys large implications of your study. It demonstrates the importance of your ideas. And it also gives the possible new ways of expanding your research. Again, it should be clear and simple language should be used. Do not simply replicate your results in discussion part in the conclusion. Again, avoid failure to match your objectives of your research with what you have attained in your conclusion part. Finally, the references, select relevant references only. Choose actual references rather than someone who has cited that if you want to cite a particular aspect. Choose mostly SCA papers, ESCA, and scopes. 60 to 80% of your references should not be more than 5 years old. That means the research is not current. Limit the number of book chapters and conference proceedings. These are some of the references that I refer to while preparing this presentation. Thank you very much, everyone. You can reach out to me on my email IDs, my ResearchGate, and my LinkedIn. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you so much, Adil. Any questions you can, in a text, like in a chat box, you can type the text.
Sir, can I ask in voice?
Yeah, you can ask.
Yeah, sure. Not.
Sir, initially you were telling that about a peer-reviewed publication and non-peer-reviewed publication. No, sir.
That's correct.
Yeah, in peer-reviewed publication, you said something useless. So, can I know a little bit information about that, sir?
Okay, so if you happen, I told you what are the reasons for publishing. So you, for example, I'll talk about you want to get a promotion. Now, if you happen to have joined a UGC recognized institute, so they have very clear-cut guidelines that your paper should be SCI or scopes, and it should not be paid.
Okay.
So if you look at these three parameters, you will not get them in a non-peer reviewed publication. If you don't get that, so your paper will not help you get the promotion.
Okay.
In other words, it's useless.
Okay, sir. And another thing, in Scopus also, in some journals are paid, no, sir.
Yes.
So that considered as a non-peer reviewed or a peer reviewed.
No, that comes. Okay, now again, in SCA also you have paid ones. In SCA also you have paid ones. So what happens is that they pay the reviewer.
Okay, sir.
Please expedite the review process. Please make it in 10 days or 5 days. But as per the UGC, as per the Indian education system framework, no paid paper is considered for assessment when it comes to your promotion. So if you're looking for a paper that will help you, it should be indexed. Okay. It should be unpaid. It should be peer reviewed. make a note of these three parameters.
Okay, sir. Sir, and one more thing, I'm also a civil engineer.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah,
Should
research,
not be.
yeah, a research
Then
scholar
there is
doing
sufficiently
project in
large number
structural
of
health monitoring.
points.
There is some noise. I don't know. Yeah, you can repeat.
Yes, sir. Doing my project in structural health monitoring, sir.
Okay,
Uh,
SHM.
yeah, yes, sir. The thing is, uh, how to choose a journal for civil engineering. Good journal
I,
for civil engineering, sir.
I think I discussed that in one of the sections that you should look for a specialized journal, super specialized, specialized,
Okay.
structural engineering, civil engineering,
Yes,
then
sir.
engineering. So
Okay.
that, and then you should look for good publishers. You
Okay.
should look for good editorial board. You should look for higher impact factor.
Okay, sir.
I think all that has been discussed in my presentation.
Okay, sir.
Yes.
And one more thing, sir. You said in introduction part, gaps in the literature.
Yes.
One point you said.
Yes.
Can little bit elaborate that point, sir?
Well, gap means that, okay, if there's a problem, okay, so for example, there's a problem with cracks in the slabs, correct? Now, there are already some techniques that take care of it, but it cannot be done during winters, it's expensive, it takes a lot of time, or, it doesn't last longer. So these are the gaps.
Okay, sir. Or
So,
project gaps, whatever.
Yeah, project gaps,
Yeah,
research
okay.
gaps.
Okay, research gaps. Okay, sir.
Yes.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Welcome. You're welcome.
Good morning, sir. Hello.
Yeah, good morning.
Sir, actually, as you say that journals should not be paid. So,
Yeah,
what is the exact meaning of the paid journal? Is it showing the low reputation of the journal or something?
absolutely, absolutely. No good journal. Okay, I spoke of good publishers. Nature journals mostly are not paid. Elsevier journals are not paid. Some of the Springer journals are paid, but most of the well-known journals, reputed journals, are not.
Okay, sir. Sir, one more thing. Now, as all know that UGC care list is very important. So, sir, in UGC care list, all journals are not showing their impact factor. It's something score showing, but we didn't get the meaning of that.
Okay, so I'll clarify to you. If you're a researcher who is looking for a longer research, long-lasting research career, don't go for the UGC ones. What you should look for, you should look that first thing, your journal should be unpaid. It should not charge you with any article processing charge. First thing. Second thing is it should be SCI indexed. I'm giving you the chronological order again. Once it's SCI, then you should look for a higher impact factor. Now that you have identified a higher impact factor journal, you should look for a good editorial board. If you follow this, no matter in which part of the world you go, you will not face any problems. Explaining my research is good, I have done good research, you will not need. Am I able to answer your question?
Yes, sir. Sir, actually, I have sent a paper. It is indexed in SCI, but actually, sir, it is paid. So, or not?
So now I will not say that it is not considered, but for evaluation process, it will not be considered. Okay. I will share
from the Web of Sciences, and then it's paid. So,
no, that is fine. That is with the Web of Science. I mean, Web of Science is nothing. It's actually a database. Web of Science has nothing to do with whether it's paid or not. They want quality manuscripts. Simple. Whether the journal charges you, it doesn't charge you. What actually happens is, unfortunately, the paid journals are open access. Just try to understand. The unpaid ones are subscribed journals. So now try to understand. You have done research, you have worked on it, and you are giving it for free. You have to pay. You have to pay to get it published. On the contrary, if you're submitting a paper to an unpaid journal, people will pay to get your paper, read. Which is better? Which is more reputable? You paying and telling people to read your paper, or you publishing a paper, people pay to the journal to read your paper. Did I make my point?
yes, sir. Yes. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Hello.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah,
Hello,
this
sir.
is Karthik from Salem. Sir,
Hi.
regarding references, you have mentioned should mention the actual references instead of cited on.
Yes.
Can you
You're,
elaborate?
Mr. Karthik, are you Professor Anbara's sir's
Yes,
student?
yes.
Okay, good. Please carry on.
Sir, in the reference portion, you are mentioned that you have to show actual references instead
Yes.
of cited on.
Yes.
What it means?
Okay. So you will be aware, because you belong to STEEL, you know that Benjamin Schaeffer and Pecos are the first to have conducted numerical simulations on geometrical imperfections, correct?
Yes.
So if you have to talk about geometrical imperfection limits, it is better to cite Schaeffer's paper rather than some other paper that has cited Schaeffer's paper for the same.
Okay, sir, I got it. Okay.
Any other queries you can ask him.
Sir.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. This is Bharati from Shri Vidyaniketan Engineering College. Hello.
Good. Hi.
Sir, could you tell some of the good journal sites, sir?
Okay. Now I'll simplify for this. You can go to Elsevier. You can go to Nature. You can go to Springer. You can go to Wiley. You can go to Taylor and Francis, and these are one of the well-known reputed publishers. Most of their journals are good journals.
Sir, and how to find journals for our domain, sir?
Journals for which? I'm sorry, could you repeat?
Journals for specific domain.
Okay, for a specific domain. Oh, when you go to a publisher, okay, they have journals. Then they list the journals based on the subject. So you click on that, then it gives you another window in which they further categorize it based on specialization. Then it goes super specialization. So all good publishers have a well-defined procedure to locate a journal of a particular area of a particular specialization.
Sir?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Sir?
Yes.
Hello, sir.
We are not a native
Anyone?
English speaker.
Anyone?
Sir.
Hello. Yes,
Hello.
please.
Hello, I'm Vasanta from Pondicherry. Hello.
Okay. Hi. I couldn't hear you. Could you repeat your question?
Sir. Hello. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello.
Yeah, ma'am. You
Yes,
can ask
good
your
morning.
question, ma'am.
Hello. Sir. Hello.
Yes, please carry on.
Hello.
Ma'am, I think there is a network problem for you. I think, can you type your question in the chat box? I think some other can ask the question.
Sir,
Yes.
since we are not a native English speaker, it's obvious that we will do the grammar error. Okay.
Absolutely.
So, how to rectify those error, and is there any possible of using any tools, sir?
What I would suggest to you is that when I started my career, I started using the Word, MS Word's grammar option, spelling and grammar option. That is one. Okay. Other than that, there are good softwares like Grammarly is a good one that you can use.
Grammarly, okay.
But that is just to begin with. I mean, you should not need it later as you progress in your research career. So what I would suggest to you is initially you can use the assistance of these tools. Okay, but as you progress, start being independent. Okay, and in the beginning, you may also seek help from any good writer. You may even take the help of any writer from a literature department or humanities department. You can get your paper checked for English. Yes.
Okay, sir. And what about other tools like Mendeley or Zotero for reference?
Mendeley is mainly for referencing. Mendeley is there for referencing. EndNote is there for referencing. I think that's not an important aspect. That is just saving time. But here we are talking of how to write good articles.
Okay.
How to, yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
So my question is, does LR, the literature review, and the CAP contains it should be included in the introduction itself.
Yes. The
Okay,
literature review as well as the gap. The gap should be the last part of the introduction. Literature review should be the center part. You should start with a broad topic, then literature review, then you should narrow down to the gaps.
Sir, one more question, sir. Sir, is it
Yes.
necessary to describe the graphs and other charts, even they are self-explanatory and very easy to understand?
Generally, what happens is when you're scrolling a paper, okay, so generally you get to look at the graph, and graphs are more self-explanatory. It gives you the understanding of the behavior. So in the text, you need to read. Graph is a visualization thing. You look at it, you try to understand that if X plot versus Y plot, this is a behavior. So graphs are preferred. Graphs, figures, tables are more preferred than simply putting it into the text part.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Actually, I'm also a civil engineer. I'm doing my MTech in infrastructure construction and management.
Good.
So I'm working on building materials. So
Okay.
I have a question on peer-reviewed and non-peer reviewed. So
Sure.
if it is like I have to work on only literature reviews and less number of practical work, so will it be a sound journal?
Now, what I can tell you is that I recently carried out a project on timber, and there's not much of research being carried out on timber. In that case, I was forced to, cite older references. Did you get my point? See, where you are forced, where you are helpless, you don't have any other option. But if you have an option where you can cite the latest, if I am to write a paper in 2020, I will have 80% of my references 2018, 2019, 2020.
Okay. Okay, that will be the sound journal.
Yes.
Okay. So that we have to cite only recent journals and refer recent journals. Okay.
Yes. So that means that your research is latest research. You got my point.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hello. Sir, how to avoid plagiarism easily, sir?
Plagiarism is you shouldn't copy. I'll put it in simple terms that no matter how much weak you are in English, no matter how much poor you are with writing, write in your own words. Once you write in your own words, start correcting rather than copying and pasting and then editing. That is the best way. Most of the papers that I see people write, if they write on their own, they don't have a lot of plagiarism. Did I answer your question?
Sir, any tips for writing review papers, sir?
Tips, I said, I'll give you only one tip. I'll not give many tips. Start writing on your own. When you write on your own, that means you're writing in your own style. Nobody can copy your style. Once you're writing in your style, no matter how bad it will be with the English part of it or the explanation part of it, then when you start improvising, getting it corrected and evaluated, at the end of your manuscript, there'll be very less plagiarism. As simple as that. Start using more synonyms. Try to look for different ways of expressing the same point. Another way is that if you have an experimental setup, give brief details and refer to that paper that the other details of this setup can be found elsewhere. Put a citation of that. So therefore you avoid repetition.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome. Hello.
Hello, sir. Hello.
Yes.
Sir. Good morning, sir. I'm Vasanta from Pondicherry. I'm doing PhD in part time. So I'm doing an agriculture side, sir. PhD in part time. So I didn't know how to go to the website.
So you
any
don't know
other
how to,
basic journal
no,
related to agriculture?
Okay, as I said, okay, we have nature. Nature is one of the most top. So in nature, You can click on nature.com. You can find the journals. You can find agriculture journals. That is one. Elsevier is a very widely subscribed journal. You can find agriculture. I mean, I'm pretty sure they have agriculture journals as well. Then next we have Springer. Springer is also a very wide database. Yeah. Then we have Taylor and Francis. We have Sage. We have Wiley. So these are some of them. Yes. Please tell me.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Sir, I have a question, sir. Like open source journals are generally paid, sir, and open source journal are getting more citations.
Yes, that's correct.
So how can we decide that we will go for that or not?
Yeah, now that is a very good question, but let me put it this way, that people generally get more citations based on their reputation. When I am looking for journals, I simply go to Elsevier, Springer, ASC. I simply go there, enter the keywords, find the journals, cite them. Even if there is a good journal paper published in an open source journal, I will never cite it. So it is not only my paper, not even my references, I would want a bad journal to be cited. Did I make my point?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So most of the citations come directly from the peer reviewers, recommendations. You're welcome.
Sir, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, I'm a third year engineering student, sir.
Oh, nice.
Sir, how can I take previous papers according to the years, sir? Like you said, recent papers like 2018, 1920. Is it okay if I take the only 3 years, or if I want to take 5 years?
No. 5 years is good enough. 5 years is good enough. Even 7 years is doable if you really have a very good paper that has been published 7-8 years back. But most of the papers should be recent. And how to find that is when generally in all these databases in Elsevier, Springer, they have an option. Whether you want papers from 2020, you should click on that. You want 2020, 2019. So you can click on the years you're interested in. It will give you the only list of papers from those particular years. So that will facilitate your, search in these databases.
Thanks a lot, sir.
Welcome.
Adil, there is a question like, sir, usually results will be explained of explanation of tables and graphs. So how it should be written and how to make more professional also. And please give information how to write a good review paper.
Okay. Now, review paper is altogether a different aspect.
Yeah.
So I'll talk it about a little later. Now, talking about graphs, tables, and figures. Basically, when you're writing in your text part, in your result part, say I did so-and-so, I found so-and-so. Then I link it to a figure, correct? Basically, that is the explanation part that one requires while reading the paper. But when I am to carry out, or I want to carry out similar research, or I want to compare the results, or if I want to validate his results, I will not go to the text part. I will directly go to the figures. I'll directly go to the tables. So tables and figures and graphs are important more, not only from explanation point of view, also if someone wants to repeat your experiments or validate your experiments, to carry out or to extend that work further. That is with reference to the tables and this discussion part. Now, coming to a review paper, my dear friend, it's a very cumbersome process. Review paper is basically choose a topic, a hot topic, a topic that attracts more readers. That's how you write. Choose a topic. Based on that, now what has been done? Because if I'm to carry out literature review, it's a very tiresome process, one by one. Then I have to track back its roots. When was the first time such a study was conducted? So review papers serve as a facilitator. That's why review papers get the maximum citation. But the time it requires to write a paper, a review paper for a good journal, it's a lot. It takes a lot of review time, it takes a lot of writing time. Over there, generally what happens is you select issues within that topic. Then you give what previous researchers have done. Then you give your assessment, your explanation, your point of view, your interpretation, and sum up that. If you have to substantiate a point, you need 10, 20, 30. So a good review paper generally does not have less than 500 references. Generally, I've seen the ASC ones. So imagine 500 papers you have to read thoroughly and summarize it in a single paper. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah. The question
Good
is
morning, sir.
answered by Mr. Sunil. I think he's having some audio problem. So I have asked on behalf of him. I think other
Sure, thank you.
Suvanta Priya. Hello, Miss Suvanta Priya can ask your questions.
Yes, sir. Sir, good morning, sir. I'm
Good
Shuganta
morning.
Priya. I'm
Good.
also from the Department of Structural Engineering.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, at present I'm doing research in cold form steel stir. For my research work, when I'm searching the reference articles, from
Yes.
the same article, I mean from the same author, I'm getting various articles which is perfectly relating to my research work. Can I use such kind of references, sir?
Now, what I would suggest to you is that if you don't have other option, then there is no other option other than to go with it. But I would prefer if you will be able to find more authors. More authors means diversity. One author means that you know the author, or maybe, you just want to benefit one author. So generally a good trend is diversity. Not only diversity with reference to that. Diversity should be, you should have one from Europe, one from America, India, and all the parts. So that means that your paper, you have searched for papers all around. That makes you a complete researcher in that aspect. But if you're not able to find, then as I discussed earlier with one of the participants, you have no other option other than to cite only one researcher's papers.
Sir, if in that case, if they are using a particular kind of software, in my research area, they are using Abacus software for the research work. When we go on search with that, we can use some other software like Answers or anything else we can use. In that case, we can refer a diversified articles and we can correlate together for the research work.
Software is just a tool. Whether I use Abacus, whether I use OpenSys, whether I use ANSYS, doesn't matter. At the end, you should relate to the core issue. So the core by train, I can go by a bus, I have different means. So the point should be that how to reach to Chennai. So I'm talking of the problem. So you should mainly focus on the problem, whichever technique, whichever software has been used. I think that is secondary.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Sir, you said in your presentation,
yes,
you were mentioned beware of Google Scholars, ProQuest, Index Campaigns or something, and site seers, etc.
Yes.
So, what kind of beware? Why you ask us to do so?
What I said was that if your journal has only those indexings, it means nothing. If your journal has SCI indexing, if it has Scopus indexing, and all those indexing, then you need not to worry. But if your journal has only those indexings, and then you think that you have a good journal paper, I'm afraid you don't have one.
Okay, sir. Thanks.
Welcome.
Good morning, sir. I'm Surya Mata from Delhi University.
Oh, nice.
I have one question that I'm a humanities student. So sometimes we also write papers which are qualitative in nature and not much quantitative data is included. So as you were talking about the quality of the paper, will there be any difference when we'll be focusing on qualitative data and qualitative analysis? So,
yeah, so I completely agree. But when you're writing a qualitative paper, that necessarily means that you'll not have quantitative details. If that serves the purpose, if that fulfills your goals, and you're very clear with that is your goal, and you're achieving that, good enough. Did you get my point? If that is what you're looking for and that is what you have achieved, good. But if you're looking for something else, getting something else, then I think one needs to reconsider. But there are a good number of only data, there are some journals that only publish data in brief. They don't have any qualitative analysis or explanation. They just give out data. On the contrary, there are other journals, some articles that are only qualitative in nature. So that is basically to accomplish those particular objectives. That's perfectly fine. One should not have any problem with that. And that is as good as a journal paper as is quantitative.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
So good morning.
Good morning.
Sir, my question is actually choosing the title of the paper. That means in what way you will choose the title, sir? Because work related only we are choosing the title of the paper. Okay. So if it is like that, the previous paper what we are referring, that paper also contains this materials. Only we are changing the what work related. That's it. So in what way you will choose that paper title, sir?
So generally what I do is I try to split the paper title into two parts. So for example, if I am talking of experimental study on something, I'll split it into two parts. Behavior of cold form steel beams, experimental study and flexural behavior. So it diverts the attention of the reader that, oh, it's in two parts. So the focus will be more. You have to get my point. That is one aspect. Second aspect is, if it is the continuation of the previous part, I would prefer to put part 1 and part 2 so that people get to know that, oh, this is a continuation of that part. If it doesn't happen to the continuation of that part, I have just used some of that, then I will not even relate it with the previous paper so far as the title is concerned. I will just move on to that section where I will link it with the previous paper by means of a citation. I will use some other title.
Sir, what title we are choosing, it should be related to the keywords or
not necessary. Not necessary that it should be with the keywords. One or two keywords can be there in the title, maybe, may not be. Again, what I am trying to emphasize is that your title, as I discussed, the qualities of a title should be clear, it should be attractive, informative, concise, brief, and to the point.
Okay, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I think we will, if you have any more queries, you can directly contact Adithal's mail ID m.yedar@civilit.ac.in. Thank you so much, Adil. I think nearly like more than 20 or 15 questions you have answered. I think you have tired enough.
That's okay, fine. I'm happy.
I think somehow this is helping the researchers to carry their research forward.
Yeah. Yes. I hope that my session was informative enough for the participants, and I hope that at the end of my...
I think
Yes, please. Please.
Sir, can I accept whatever result is come out, and afterwards we validate with machine learning and other any software like AI and IoT based, so we can acceptable or accepted in any journals?
Again, as I said, these tools are just tools. If it serves the purpose, if I'm using a calculator for calculation, good enough. If I'm using a calculator for performing an analysis, a complicated analysis, no journal will accept that. So your tool is just a tool to facilitate your calculations or the process, which would be complicated otherwise. So there's nothing like whether it will be accepted or it will not be accepted. If it serves the purpose and you prove it and you give some citations that it has been used by other researchers, good enough.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Welcome.
One more question, sir.
Sure.
How many papers we analyze for finding the gap? Means how to finding the gap while using research, and we focus on particular area.
No, my
so how
friend,
many papers I will prefer?
Okay. So I'll put it this way. This is a very different question. It depends. You might find 10 gaps in one paper. You might not find a single gap in 50 papers. So it depends upon, first, how much work has been carried out in that area. One.
Okay.
Second, how extensive the work has been carried out. Two. Third, what type of papers you're reading. So in Scopus papers, you might not find that substantial gaps. In SCI paper, because your paper should get through, the scrutiny process is good enough. In that, generally, I find a couple of gaps per paper. But again, it is subjective. I cannot generalize it.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
I think
So,
Professor,
Daniel?
yeah, we will
Yes.
end up. I think one more person, they have raised their hands. Professor Rekha.
Yeah, sir, I already asked the question.
Okay. Then we will end up the session. I think 2 participants have raised their hands. They can unmute their audios and ask their questions. I think Dr. Deepali Kumari can ask your questions. Okay. If no more questions, I'd like to thank Adil there. Actually, it is like thanks for accepting the invitation. So that is very much important. Actually, yes, even 2 days before we had a talk, and he has been preparing for this sessions. So I'd like to thank you very much, Adil, for. I hope that this will be really very much helpful. You can see the chat box, like nearly more than 50 people. They have very informative sessions, a nice session. So a lot of comments
Thank
were
you.
there. So somehow it is helping some researchers for their career. So I'd like to thank you once again, Adil. So thank you so much.
I'm happy that it was informative, and I'm happy to have benefited. Thank you very much, and good luck to all.
Adil sir, 1 minute, sir.
Yeah.
Sure.
Sir, Mendel software is there, no?
Mendeley, yeah.
Yes, sir. My Mendeley, sir. Sir, we need to install that Mendeley software on a system.
Yes,
Yes,
you need to install it, and then you should have an account in Mendeley. Then it will install the plugins. Then in your Word, you will have an option of introducing your citations and references.
So the open software, sir, Mendeley software.
Yeah, it's
open,
free.
sir.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
I think Dr. Madhuri, you can ask your question, ma'am.
Hello,
Daniel.
sir.
Yeah. Hi.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
Hello.
Ma'am, you can ask your question.
Hi. Yeah.
Sir, I just wanted to ask you, if someone wanted to be a member of any research journal, so what to do?
Member, as in, are you talking of an editorial board member?
Lifetime membership?
No. There's nothing. No. Let me clarify. If you're talking of professional society is a different thing where you get, memberships. So, like we have the Institution of Engineers. Journals don't have any memberships of that sort. Journals have 2 memberships. One is the editorial board membership. So, for that, is decided by the journal, and it comes through recommendation. Second is the reviewer. So there are reviewers. That again comes through recommendations. So both of these types of memberships in journals, because there's nothing like a life member, comes through recommendations and extensive research.
As there are only subscriptions, okay?
Yeah, there are only subscriptions, absolutely. And you cannot
Okay.
mention that anywhere that I am a member. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Tomorrow, I think 10 a.m. Most people, I will be taking a lecture on literature review. So we will meet you all tomorrow 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Thank you, Adil. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and good luck to all for their wonderful papers in great journals. All the best. Take care. Bye-bye. Have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you, Adil.